Imagine feeling comfortable and free in telling your partner what you want. What would that do for your relationship and your connection and love? Imagine being able to say things like, "Last night, when you touched this part of my body with such care and attention, it felt so sexy and turned on." Or, "I love making love first thing in the morning. It's the best part of waking up with you." Or, "I feel most turned on when you touch me this way and look deeply into my eyes. My whole body shudders in pleasure." Whether you're dating or you've been together for decades, there are two huge reasons why you should be talking about sex more. First, it allows you to be intentional in your relationship. Intentionality is the piece that differentiates couples that can only have sex when the situation is perfect, when the stars align, and those who create perfect conditions out of any situation. It differentiates couples who have passionate sex only in the beginning of the relationship and then see sexual desire wane and die out altogether, and those whose sex gets more passionate as they spend more time together. Without intention or intentionally looking at this and finding ways to make this work for you, you're at the mercy of hormones, old habits, assumptions, and projections, both cultural and between genders. In fact, according to John Gottman, the foremost research scientist of relationships and head of the Love Lab at University of Washington in Seattle, of the couples who cannot comfortably talk about sex with one another, only 9% say that they are sexually satisfied. And sexual satisfaction is not something you want to risk in a relationship because it will either bring you closer or push you further apart. When you're intentional, you get to be curious about your partner and learn what truly matters to them and to you so that you can do more things that work and less that don't. You can prioritize things. You can put more effort and intention in the things that are going to bring you closer. And again, do less things of the things that don't. The second reason is that intentional communication about sex sets both of you up for success. The reality is that most couples communicate when they're pressed to do it, out of frustration or resentment or anger. Usually they're pressed to communicate after a few failures and disappointments and hurt feelings. And that's when it's least effective. We bring too much charge, too much dissatisfaction and resentment into such communication. And that pushes our partners away from us and doesn't get us what we want. Communicating upfront and intentionally about sex, both your desires and what you want, what you don't want, sets you and your partner up for success because your communication becomes softer, more compelling, and has actual actionable information rather than blame, judgment, or complaints. This communication is not just about getting what you want. Talking about sex is a powerful way to deepen intimacy and connection, to grow closer with your partner, and experience sex in a way that nourishes both people. If you're in a committed monogamous relationship, it's a kind of conversation that you can only have with your romantic partner and a bond that you can only develop with them. First, we need to understand that there isn't just one single sex conversation to be had. There are actually three, and they need to be ongoing. You don't just have them one and you're done, but it is something that becomes a practice in your relationship, a new habit to hold. Understanding each type and when to engage in each will help you feel more relaxed, comfortable, and at ease with each other, and break you out of cycles of hurt feelings and miscommunication traps that most couples so easily fall into. I will go through them one by one, starting with the kind of conversation that most people try to have and actually fail at it. And that is communication about sex in the moment when you are having it. When we think about talking about sex, it's logical to think that it would be during sex. Communication during sex can be incredibly intimate, passionate even. It's the most advanced and most challenging type of sex communication out there. Why? Because it happens in the heat of the moment, When your body is aroused, your emotions are open, and you're at your most vulnerable. You're probably focused on pleasuring each other and getting to that orgasm. It's a sensitive moment, and there's little room for error. To master sex communication in the moment, you have to learn the other two types of sex communication, and I'll get to them in a moment. First, let's explore this type of sex conversation so that you see what is possible for you with this advanced skill. Aside from pillow talk or kinky play, communication during sex should focus on something your partner can do in the moment or that you are wanting to do. It can be asking for what you want them to do, offering something that you want to do, making an adjustment, stopping something and redirecting, or showing appreciation for what you like. This is not the time to discuss big topics such as how you want sex to be different or what's not working. We'll get to that in a moment. Here are a few examples of things that could work in the moment. Sharing what you want. I'd love for you to massage the labia gently, then enter me very slowly while you kiss me. You could also ask for an adjustment. Could you go slower in your touch on my breasts? It sends tingles down my body when you go super slow. You can offer what you want to do. I'm dying to go down and taste you. Could we change positions so I get to dive right in? You might want to ask your partner to stop something and redirect them to something else that you want. I'm uncomfortable in this position and I need to stop for now. Could you hold me tightly in your arms instead? It'll feel so good for me right now. Or lastly, it could be an expression of your appreciation or something that you are enjoying. I love how you're touching me so softly on my back right now. I'm so relaxed and your touch is making my whole body buzz with pleasure. Don't stop. Here's an important tip regarding communication in the moment. The key to being successful in all of this is to be as specific as possible in your requests so that your partner knows exactly how to give you what you want. Could you move a little to the left? That feels really good and I can feel you against my G-spot. This gives your partner information exactly what to do. You want to avoid generalities such as, could you make touch feel more pleasurable? I'm not really feeling much right now. There is very little actionable information to let your partner know exactly what to do. And this will create a lot of disappointment, disconnection, and maybe even an argument. If you have not had much experience in this, or knowing what you want or like, this will seem very hard right now. You might think that expressing what you want in such a detailed way is impossible. You might also think that you don't know what you want in such detail, so how could you convey that to your partner, let alone during sex? All of this might be true for now. But with practice, you can get to the point in which you are that specific and verbal during sex. And that practice involves the two other conversations I'm about to introduce. But before we move on, one more tip about talking during sex. This is not the time to bring up sensitive topics that require listening, processing, or discussion, especially if it involves criticism. Sex puts us in a heightened state of sensitivity in which we don't receive feedback well, even under the best intentions. Even worse, bringing up big topics during sex puts your partner in a highly vulnerable position to have to answer when they feel trapped with no lead up. This is guaranteed to trigger even the best and most conscious listeners and leave them feeling powerless because this is coming out of the blue. Avoid what I call trapped conversations that put a person on the spot. Discuss bigger sex topics outside of having sex, where you both have the mental capacity to truly listen to each other and discuss. Which is a perfect segue into the second very powerful type of sex conversations, the discovery conversation. Discovery conversations are spaces where you get to explore and understand each other and yourselves, to share your desires, and also to give feedback in a safe setting. It's called a discovery conversation because it helps you discover each other. Even after years or decades together, allow for your own evolution and that of your partner, and get curious about what's true for them now. Use open-ended questions to learn about your partner, such as, what helps you feel safe and open up sexually with me? What makes you feel close to me? What makes you feel desired? What makes you feel sexy? What makes you feel most turned on? How do you like being touched in the beginning when we're making out? And what kind of touch helps you feel more aroused? If you're really curious, there are thousands of open-ended questions you can ask to learn about your partner and what's really important to them, without pressure to deliver in that passionate moment. I share with you more than 30 questions in a downloadable PDF, which is available at my website at irenefair.com/questions. Both people engaging in open and curious discovery conversations creates a habit of expressing your needs and desires and delivering feedback without putting each other on the spot. Over time, sex topics will no longer feel as intimidating when you get to share what you want more of. Timing for this kind of conversation is important, as it warrants sensitivity and kindness, as well as spaciousness and lack of pressure. You want to create a safe space for each other to open up vulnerably, share your experience, ask for what you need and want, and sometimes negotiate a solution to a challenge and not be distracted by other things as you do that. Avoid what I call flyby conversations. That is, conversation about sex as you're doing other things and don't really have full attention from each other. You are bound to miss each other and build resentment that way, not to mention get into a fight. Equally, avoid what I call trapped conversations, where you literally trap someone in a small space, such as a long car ride or sex, so that they cannot avoid talking to you about it. Instead, propose ahead of time to have this type of discussion and share with your partner why it's important to you, how it would help you to get closer to them. Then let your partner tell you when they're ready. When you've set a mutually beneficial time, make sure that you're both relaxed and calm and that you can be fully present with each other. This will help you feel safe to open up, especially since it may be your first time ever talking about sex this way. Hold this conversation during the day, in the living room, and avoid the bedroom and bedtime, which can introduce the pressure of sex. Although it might relax you a bit, it will also be key to avoid alcohol because it will skew your conversation. Lastly, let go of pressure to solve anything or come up with any creative solutions during this conversation. Relax and enjoy learning and discovering each other. You will definitely need a few rounds to go deep with each other and even make it a regular practice for learning about each other on an ongoing basis. Here are a few tips to make the best out of these conversations. First of all, slow down. Stay curious by listening to learn. Resist giving feedback or coming back with your own side of the experience. Take in the information that you're getting from your partner and collect data points. Once you've asked a question, wait before talking again. Then wait some more. Give your partner space and time to come up with their answer. It may be their first time ever thinking about this. They may not even have the words to express what they want or how they feel. Give them time and space. You can go deeper with each question by asking for clarification, even examples. Stay on topic and ask your partner to describe more. For example, if they're talking about certain touch that they like, ask them what they like about this kind of touch or under what conditions do they like this kind of touch. Dig deeper to discover more. Now, a fair warning about discovery conversations. You really want to follow these additional recommendations. Don't use this conversation for attacking your partner by answering their questions in a way that throws critical barbs back at them. Here's an example. What helps you feel safe? When you're back from work before dinner, which never happens because of your role as the VP of your big ass important company, you're not really answering the question, but sharing this built up resentment here of not feeling important to your partner. You need to have a separate conversation for that, not use this context to vent that. You do want to focus on actionable information to answer the topic. For example, what helps you feel safe? It helps me when you come home on time, when you told me you would. It makes me feel respected and cared for. When you see me that way, it makes me feel safe and open to reaching out to you sexually. When you create a safe space to talk about sex and desires and to give feedback, it becomes less intimidating. It can actually be fun and deeply intimate and connecting. There's a third type of sex conversations that's really important. It's an opportunity to learn practically and interactively what you want to have an experience with your partner and master sex communication, not to mention take sex to the next level. The best part about it is you get to play. That's why the third type of sex conversation is an experiential one. I call it the intimacy sandbox. An intimacy sandbox is more than a verbal conversation. It's a physical conversation where you learn about each other by playing with touch, sexual energy, eroticism, and seeing how your body responds. It's a learning opportunity to explore what you want and what feels good without the pressure to get a result or to get things right. You get to discover what works and what doesn't in touch, kissing, even orgasm, without criticism from your partner or, again, pressure to get it right. You start to build a vocabulary that lets you ask for what you want and share your experience. And you get to have fun without the pressure to get it right. You don't get to find out the answers of what you want by thinking about them or coming up with some logical conclusion. You find out the answers by playing in the sandbox with each other and see how you respond. Think of it as an erotic science experiment that requires you to play with each other sensually and sexually and look at patterns or things that you get out of it. For example, you might experiment with types of touch, fast, medium, slow, or energetic, and see what kind produces which physical sensations and emotional reactions in your body. You might experiment with touch on various parts of the body, from arms to back to breasts to pussy to cock, and notice what it's like to be touched on different areas. Again, what sensations it creates in your body. You might experiment what it's like to be the giver and what it's like to receive touch, and again, what that creates. You might practice undressing each other and see what happens. Here, mistakes are welcomed. Experiment, take risks, and step outside of your routine. Do things you've never done, and learn about yourselves and each other. At worst, it doesn't work, and you get to laugh about it all. Here's a quick how-to guide to creating your intimacy sandbox. First, set aside uninterrupted time together. Give yourselves at least a couple of hours, and maybe even a whole day. The longer, the better. Why do you need all this time? The sandbox is the opposite of this quick to finish sex that you might be used to, and which might get the deed done, but doesn't feel as nourishing or satisfying. You want a longer session because it takes time to let go of the outside world and get your mind to relax. It takes time to get comfortable with each other. It takes time to let go and feel pleasure. It's when you clear the space for each other, you get to be lovers, and magic happens. Talk about what you want to explore ahead of the session. Basically, design your erotic science experiment. Maybe this week you want to explore touch, or play with positions, or experiment with kink. Come up with some questions or ideas you want to focus on, kind of like a hypothesis, and then explore it in the session. You also want to come up with boundaries. Do you want to explore this with clothes on or naked? Do you want to set a timer for an hour or 3? Do you want to experiment with this kind of touch or that kind of touch? Agree on what you want to do ahead of time. And this prevents arguments or miscommunication, and everyone knows what to expect. You want to get your implements for your lab time, like a timer, toys, towels, and water, and maybe even a snack if you're going for a long session. Turn off your phones, take the dog out to pee beforehand to avoid later distractions. Then jump right in. Experiment with each other. Ask for what you want. Make adjustments. Make offers. Have fun. Afterwards, debrief. Share feedback about what you liked and what you learned about yourself and each other from this experiment. Agree what you want to do next that might be different from what you've done before. Use what you learned in the experience to then change what you're doing ahead of time. Here's a pro tip for communication. Be sure to frame your feedback about what you don't like as a desire for what you do want. So here's an example. Instead of this heavier pressure, I'd prefer lighter, as if your fingertips were dancing on my skin. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's perfect. Or, I prefer when you enter me slowly rather than fast. I find it more arousing and exciting, and it seems to prevent pain. You are focusing on what you do want rather than focusing on what you don't want, because that provides more actionable information and sets your partner up for success in delivering it. Now we've covered these 3 sex conversations that will create sex that's more passionate, more exciting, more connected, and a lot more of it. The more you practice verbal discovery conversations and the physical intimacy sandbox, the more you will feel comfortable and uninhibited to communicate about sex in the moment. And if you think about it, talking about what you like and find pleasure in, well, that begets more moving towards creating that pleasure. Thanks for listening. Have fun with this information, and I'll see you in my next video.